Hello, I'm Mike Huckabee, and I have a real issue. I'm a bass player. I'm sure you can recognize that. And you know, the fact is, I've been playing bass since I was right at 12 years old. I started playing guitar at 11. My first guitar was a J.C. Penney catalog order that my parents got for me. It's a story I tell in a book called A Simple Christmas, and it's a great story because I had begged for a guitar for about 5 years, and my parents just, couldn't afford it, and I didn't understand that, but they couldn't. And one year I said, if I don't get a guitar, I don't want anything else for Christmas, and I risked getting nothing. They ended up getting me a guitar. They paid $99 for the guitar, amplifier, everything with it. It took them a year to pay for it. They had to pay a little each month in order to do it, but it was the gift of my life. And I played that thing till my fingers nearly bled. And when I was just short of 12, I started realizing that there were a lot of guitar players, there weren't many bass players. And I loved the sound of the bass, and it was a country band in my hometown of Hope, Arkansas, where there was a guy that just played some great bass runs, and I thought, maybe I should take up bass, because then I could always be in a band and I'd always have a gig. So I got my first bass. It was a little Vox electric bass. I had a amplifier that one of the firemen that my dad worked with made out of an old jukebox speaker. That was my first bass amp, and I liked it because it drove my parents crazy. But that's when I started playing bass, and over the years I evolved and played bass through a lot of country and rock bands in high school, and never was good enough to be great, be professional, but never lost the love of it. Had a Fender Jazz bass, 1967 model, and had that bass through most of my high school years. When my first child came along, I ended up having to sell it and all my other equipment in order to pay for groceries and diapers. I'm sure that's a story familiar to many of you. And I went through a several-year hiatus of not owning musical instruments just because, it was that time that it was groceries or guitars, and groceries won during that time. My wife was in a pawn shop one day, or saw in a window a Fender Jazz bass, and it turned out it was a 1966 model. She called me and she said, they're asking, and she told me how much it was, and I said, are you serious? Go in there, put cash on that table, walk out with that guitar, and do it before they realize what they are doing and what they're selling it for. I won't tell you, but I'll just tell you, I got a heck of a deal on that guitar. That put me back in the bass business, and through the years I have enjoyed playing more than ever. And when I was governor, I started a band called Capital Offense, and we ended up playing gigs with Willie Nelson and Grand Funk Railroad and 38 Special and Charlie Daniels Band, and had more fun than a person deserves. Started playing, just places I would go, and once people know that you can play, even if you don't play well, and I certainly would be in that category, but I'd go to do political events, and they'd say, hey, come play with us. So I had a lot of experiences that were incredible, getting to play not just with garage bands, but with some pretty incredible artists, playing on stage with Alabama and Charlie Daniels, and a lot of great artists. And when I ran for president, I found that one of the things that people would ask me to do, whether it was appearing in a school or whatever, was to play bass. One scary experience was I was a guest in the Jay Leno show, and Jay knew that I played, and Kevin Eubanks, his band director, came back in the green room before the show and said, hey, Huckabee, I hear you played bass. He said, you ought to play with our band sometime. I'm saying, yeah, right. So I go out and do the interview. I'm sitting there with Leno. We're ready to take the break, and Leno looks over at me and says, well, Huckabee, why don't you go over and play with Kevin and the band? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I don't know what you're going to play. We've had no rehearsal. We're talking national television on The Tonight Show. Have you lost your mind? And, he looked at me with this look like, we're serious. So I don't have a choice. I walk over, and I'm thinking, what are we going to do? Kevin Eubanks hands me a bass, and I said, what are we playing? He said, something in E flat. The drummer hits the downbeat, and off we go. So it was the ride of my life. Fortunately, it was a pretty simple 12-bar kind of thing that I could just feel, and I got through it. But there were moments like that. I think people thought that I was a better musician than I was. When I started my Fox News television show, one of the things that I wanted to do was to include music as a part of the show. And we've done that. And we started with just picking up musicians who were employees there at the Fox News Channel, people that work lighting and sound, and it's been fantastic to have that kind of opportunity. These are amateur musicians who, like me, if they could, they'd be at it full time. Some of them are actually good enough to do it. You know, I'd have to drive the bus. I wouldn't get to be one of the musicians on it. But that's been an incredible opportunity for me to meet many of the artists that I grew up loving and admiring, and being able to just stand on the same stage with. It's been incredible. I look back and I think of some of the influences that have been great influences on my life as a musician and bass player. I mean, some of the people, certainly Mel Shaker from Grand Funk Railroad, I think Noah Redding from Jimi Hendrix. And when I think back, some of the reasons for those guys is because they were in bands that only had 3 people. And the bass player was not just a part of a 10-piece band. He had to carry an extraordinary amount of the music. And I'm not saying I can play like any of those guys, but I understood what the capacity for a bass could be. Paul McCartney certainly was an influence, and again, he was a far greater musician, I think, than people ever gave him credit for. Peter Cetera from the band Chicago before he broke off on his own and went solo. Those are some of the, I guess, bass players that through the years I've just thought, they really had it together. Obviously many, many more, but one of the things that's been most fun for me, I'm at a point in my life where for the first time I can actually enjoy getting to play a lot of the instruments that I always just got to look at in the showroom window. I mostly play a Tobias 4-string bass. I love it because it's got very fast action. The neck on it is even, to me, faster than the Fender Jazz. It's got great growling lows and punchy highs. The tone variation on that thing is, to me, incredible. It's a very forgiving instrument. So if you're sort of a ham and egger like me, you need all the help you can get, and that bass kind of carries the load when I can't. I have 2 Fender Jazzes, the one my wife got, and then I had one made by Fender that is exactly down to the last minute detail like the one that I had when I was a teenager. Spent a lifetime trying to find, never could find one that was affordable, so I had Fender make one, which is a prized possession for me now. I've got a Rickenbacker 4003, a Dean Pro. I've got an acoustic Epiphone that I enjoy. I have a beautiful guitar that was handmade out in Oregon, and it's an acoustic bass that it's been a sweet sounding guitar. I play mostly through a SWR stack that has a big bin on the bottom and 4 10s on top with an SWR head. Got a Gens Benz head that I sometimes have used, but I really like the SWR package probably for an amp. And I'm just trying to think what else that, equipment-wise. But the main thing I want to say is this: music is a life skill, and there are a lot of things that a person can do when they're young that they can't do when they get older. But the one thing that a person can do is to not only take up music as a hobby, but to enjoy it, to appreciate it, and to participate in it. And no matter how old a person gets, you never lose that. So one of my passions is to work with a Wanna Play Fund through NAMM. We've just recorded a CD with a lot of celebrities. 100% of the proceeds of the sales of that are going to go to do something that someone did for me, and that's put a musical instrument in the hands of a student. My goal, my dream would be that there's no kid in America who is unable to access music personally because his parents can't afford it. I'd love for every student to be able, if it's a guitar, a pair of drumsticks, a horn, whatever musical instrument it might be, that kid would be able to have access to it. And I want to do everything I can to make sure that happens. I know what it did to change my life, and I know what it could do to change the life of some other student out there.